Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes.
Yes, we do.
And just real briefly, after I just say a couple things, I'm going to have Bambi sort of fill in the blanks as far as the history. A lot of it, was mentioned there, but the history of the mobile produce market. What we know is, I'm going to get this PowerPoint. In Allen County, we have 11 stores that have what we would like to see, some of the stuff that we have on the bus. And also in Allen County, we have, I had it on my hand, I think 165.
235 mini marts.
235 mini marts and I think 65 liquor stores. So
yep. I got it backwards.
Marts.
Wait a minute, backwards. 235 alcohol markets. There was 3 numbers I really wanted us to focus in on. 235, 65 mini marts, which is what you're seeing here, and 11 grocery stores in Allen County. That was one of the numbers that shocked me.
That's what's available to most folks.
This is the way right now that West Ohio Food Bank is getting food out. We have been taking it to individuals. We partner with the groups. The 2 top slides are with the Shawnee United Methodist. They've done a big drop for the last couple of years. The bottom is with the Cup Pantry. So we have been getting food out, and especially produce. And flip to the next one. And you'll see that we also then take it out where we have individuals. Most of these people stand in line to be able to get this food, and that's where the idea came that we need to help people in small areas throughout Allen County. And we're saying Allen County because that's where the money is coming from to support our first mobile produce market here. So the idea is that people can go through. There's a lot of people that are missed in the poverty and unemployment rates. Right now, our pantries, our soup kitchens, our shelters are serving people at 200%. So we are not taking statistics on this bus and saying you can only have this kind of level of income to come and shop. We're opening it up to the community. We know that there are people that when they go through will believe in the mission that we're doing, and they may then go ahead and give $5 for something that really would total what we are having it available for. It may be $2.50. So we're welcoming any kind of that. The idea of this bus, though, is that it is going to be a purchase program, but people are not going to pay anywhere near what they would, whether it's a market or whether it's one of the 11 grocery stores in Allen County.
And we'll show where those...
And that's where these are located right here.
So those circles show where currently the full-service supermarkets are, where people can get fresh produce. And so like Bambi will explain to you, I mean, part of the original vision of this always has been it's an Allen County program.
Correct. It is Allen County. There are other areas other than just our food deserts that are here in, quote, our urban part of Lima. And as we expand and they get practice and they can get their timetables and their schedules right, they will be expanding out into those other areas that you can see at the top right, top left, lower bottom. And it's going to be right now, truthfully, going to some of the senior housing because we have developed rapport with these people. And with LACA.
That's the alcohol. So,
yes.
I wanted to see.
Here's Allen County. You can see the deserts. You can see then the circles. And we thank Tom Macer for getting all this data for us so that we could have a visual for you to look at. But
we do want to make sure, like Bambi said, that people know, if for those of you who were there Tuesday at the dedication, I just mentioned we're biting off a piece of the pie, that we can chew to start with, which is going to be this sort of, central city area to start with for the bus. But again, back to this county map, this is the area we want to eventually be going to. And so, we may even we're only running it 2 days a week to begin with, but on some of those other 3 days or even a weekend here or there, we may try to begin, doing some pilots out to those other areas because we don't want to lose that focus. So.
A lot of people say, what are the numbers? Who's this really going to serve? It's very hard to tell. People will be publicizing this, but right now, just in Allen County, there's more than 18,000 people that are sitting at need in these areas. So when you take in the whole area of Allen County, and as Tom educated us last week, you know, these food deserts have many, many definitions. You know, in our urban area, it's a lack of a grocery store a mile away. Out in the rural, it's 10 miles away. So you can see when you see the chart that shows where those grocery stores are. And I think a lot of people think that most of the people in poverty live in urban areas, and certainly in Allen County, that is not true.
Right, and actually, even like Bambi mentioned, that 18,000 number really just counts this sort of central city area. We still need to get with Tom and learn a little bit more about what the actual numbers are for the outlying areas. So that 18,000 includes the 12 food desert areas that you see right there, but places like Westminster, where is that slide, that you see on there, Westminster, Landeck, Lafayette, Harrod, Gomer, you know, places like that, none of those are included in that 18,000. So still need to get to those areas.
We want to encourage you to come aboard the bus, and before you leave today, the produce that's on the bus, we want you to take a bag, and you're welcome to make any kind of small contribution that you would like to towards this endeavor. But the two staff people that are standing here at the back, I'll let Gary introduce them, but they're going to be traveling with this bus and coordinating the programs and what is happening. So today, Gary and I will be here till the end of this, and we will be very glad to answer any questions and take any of concerns that you have, and also any suggestions. This is a whole new concept. It's new to Feeding America. It's new to food banking. They have vehicles and run around that are out in many counties dropping product for handouts or to pantries, shelters, and soup kitchens. But as far as actually taking this and having people come aboard and get vegetables for the week, this is a new concept. So we would love to share that with you and welcome any of your concerns or questions or suggestions.
And just real briefly again, for those of you who weren't here Tuesday, how we'll be starting out is Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Tom and his staff have color-coded. 4 of those are Tuesdays. The other 4 colors are the Thursday stops. We'll be going to a total of 7 senior housing sites, and then LACA. So LACA, we're hoping to catch some of the children and families. So that's where to look for us. It'll be published on the website. It's also on our brochures. In the back is Silas Larson, who is our mobile produce market coordinator, and Lori Casey, who will be the staff person on the bus. Silas is full-time, and he's going to, okay, we're at our time. So please go on the bus, take some produce, catch Bambi and I afterwards if you have questions, or the folks from the bus. Thanks.
Thank you to all of you here, because we know there's many of you that are partners with us. Thank you.
All right, good morning. I'm Pastor Dave Harris, lead pastor at Trinity United Methodist Church downtown, and we're going to have a panel discussion at this time that's also going to include you in the discussion. So we'll have times when the panel members are sharing ideas, raising questions and all, but I've got a mic here. I'm going to be working the group too, so when you have questions or comments that you want to make, we'll be feeding that in as well. But the basic question we're asking during this time is about knowledge and behavior. Why is knowing not enough? Why is knowing not enough? But first, let's have some introductions here. There are two microphones laying back there. Chris, could you kind of pass them one way and one the other way? And we're going to have some introductions. Why don't we start down at this end with Kathy? Tell us who you are and what you do.
Kathy Lunn, and the Health Commissioner at the Allen County Health Department.
Cherry Mitchell, the Project Director for the Community Transformation Grant through Activate Allen County.
Chris North, Professor of Communication and International Health.
Daphne Lindo, Behavioral Health Practitioner at Allen County Health Partners. I must put a plug in for Allen County.
Hold it a little bit closer to your mouth so we can.
I must put a plug in for Allen County Health Partners because we are now a patient-centered medical home. We were approved in July of 2013. We offer several services there. We're a one-stop shop health center. We have pharmacy, we have behavioral health, we have chiropractic services, we have peds and adult services, and dental. So we take care of you from head to toe, and I'm there to help the medical providers work with you to enrich your lives. And we are in a healthcare desert. Just wanted to let you know that.
I'm Father Dave Ross. I'm the pastor at St. Rose on McKibben and West, and St. John down here on South Main.
All right, thank you. Now, we're going to begin, as we think about the knowledge and behavior, with a quiz. And so I want you to take a piece of paper there. You can use the back of one of the sheets, or if you've got your own paper, because you're going to be writing down answers as we do this quiz. And hopefully everybody will participate in this. I'll give you a moment to get your materials together. And we'll see what kind of knowledge that we have. First of all, we'll go through the questions. There'll be a number of them have blanks or multiple choice, and you can answer those. And then we'll go back through them again with the answers that are given, and we'll see how we do. First one. Today's children are expected to live how many years less than their parents? Today's children are expected to live how many years less than their parents? Okay. Next question. How much exercise is recommended for each of us? A, 20 minutes, 7 days a week. B, 30 minutes, 5 days a week. C, an hour a day. A, B, or C? A, B, or C? Next, in the last 7 days, how many have you exercised? Okay. In the last 7 days, how many have you exercised, and for how long? For some of us, that's a very easy question to answer, isn't it? Next. Do your children have physical education class in school? Yes or no? If yes, how many days a week? Do your children have physical education class in school? Yes or no? And if yes, how many days a week? Next question. How many hours of sleep does an adult need each night? How many hours of sleep does an adult need each night? 5 to 7? 7 to 9, or 9 to 11? Next question, how many hours of sleep did you get last night? Many of us would say not enough, right? How many hours of sleep did you get last night? Next question, how much of your plate should contain fruits and vegetables at each meal? A, 1/4, B, 1/3, C, 1/2. Next question, how much of your plate contained fruits and vegetables at your last meal? A, 1/4, B, 1/3, or C, 1/2? Your last significant meal. If you had a breakfast bar this morning, that probably wouldn't count for much, would it? You got some grain in that perhaps. Okay, next question. Do you know what your child eats for lunch at school each day? Do you know what your child eats for lunch at school each day? Yes or no? Next question. Father Ross says no. He doesn't know what his children have for lunch. Next question, do you pack your children's lunch for school? Do you pack your children's lunch for school? Yes or no? Next question, how far do you live from a supermarket or large grocery store? A, less than 1 mile. B, between 1 and 5 miles. C, between 5 and 10 miles. Or D, more than 10 miles. Next question, do you live in a food desert? You saw the chart a little bit ago, the map of the area, a little understanding of the geography of that and what it means. Do you live in a food desert? Next question, do you take walks or bike rides through your neighborhood? Yes or no? Do you take walks or bike rides through your neighborhood? Yes or no? And if yes, how often? How often? Okay? Now we're going to go back through again and see what this looks like. Today's children are expected to live 2 to 5 years less than their parents. How many people got that right? Okay, let's see a show of hands here. Okay? We don't have stars to give out, but we do want to see what's happening here. Okay? How much exercise is recommended for each of us? And the answer is B, 30 minutes, 5 days a week. Now you see the source here for some of these questions according to the CDC. How many got this one right? Pretty good. Pretty good. All right. In the last 7 days, how many have you exercised? Now this is, I'm not going to ask everybody to do a self-reporting here. Okay, but you see your answer. And for how long did you exercise? And I'll let you do your own comparison, okay, to what the previous statement was. Do your children have physical education class in school? Let's see how many, those of you who have children in school, how many actually have them in their class? Do you know? How many do? Okay. And do you know how many days a week? Just call out some numbers.
Every day, half a year.
What's that?
It's every day, but only half a year.
Every day, but only half a year. And somebody else said one a day. Who else? They've cut it out of a lot of high schools. I don't know. High schools don't have it? Okay. Okay, so younger children. All right. Okay. Well, we know what we're talking about here. How many hours of sleep does an adult need each night? 7 to 9 hours. How many got that one right? Okay. All right. How many hours of sleep did you get last night? Let's hear a few. 5, 4, 8, 7. Okay. All right. How much of your plate should contain fruits and vegetables at each meal? The answer is C, 1/2. How many got that right? Okay. Some of these were only batting about 500 on. So how much of your plate contained fruits and vegetables at your last meal? Okay, you know the answer on that. How many said A? How many of you said A? Okay. How many of you said B? And how many said C? Okay. All right. Do you know what your child eats for lunch at school each day? How many know? Okay, we have some that know. We have some that know. How many of you don't know? Okay, we have some honest people here that don't know. Okay. All right. Do you pack your children's lunch for school? Anybody here pack lunches? Okay. All right. Do you live in a food desert? Could you tell by the map there, if you're in this area that was on the map, do you live in a food desert? How many here would say, yes, I live in a food desert? Okay. All right, thank you. How far do you live from a supermarket or large grocery store? Chris, I was a little unclear about what this slide, since we have two circles there, what you can tell us about that?
If you live in an area where the population is 500 people per square mile, and you're more than a mile from a grocery store, and less than 5 miles, in that 1 to 5 mile area, you're in a food desert. If you live in a rural community, and you are more than 10 miles from the nearest grocery store or supermarket, you're in a food desert.
All right, thank you. That one was explained earlier, so I thank you for that. All right. Do you take walks or bike rides through your neighborhood? Yes or no? How many people do? How many people do? Okay. Quite a few. How many would do it, say, once a week? Twice a week? 3 times a week? 4 times a week? Every day? Okay. All right. Very good. Okay, now, we're going to leave this slide up, social ecological model, as we're talking now, and you can look at some of the things on here as we talk. But the question for us that we're posing is, we have lots of knowledge, don't we, about how to live our how to live our lives more healthily. But why is it that knowledge is not enough? Why is knowing not enough? So we're going to start with the panel now and see what kinds of comments they have. We're going to be talking about both issues and solutions that affect us individually, that affect us as families, and affect our community. All right? Issues and solutions. So who wants to start here? Who wants to jump in first?
I guess I'll
Tell us your
start.
name again.
I am Cherry Mitchell, Project Director of the Community Transformation Grant. The issue I like to bring up is breastfeeding. I'm an advocate, I'm a new mother, and when you think about knowledge and the fact that breastfeeding is important, most people here, I would say, maybe you all know that it is important that your child is breastfed, but what is actually in place to support you for breastfeeding? Think about the hospitals. What practices are currently being done now so that a mother can successfully breastfeed and continue duration? What about family support? What about workplace support? Are there policies in place for your employees so that when they do transition back into work, that they can successfully continue to breastfeed? Even if that's your sister or your wife or your mother, is there something happening at home that you're supporting that family member or friend so they can continue breastfeeding? So there is a lot more than reading the books and us giving you statistics about the importance of breastfeeding and what else, the reduction for diseases and everything else that we know, but we have to make sure that there are system changes and things are implemented so that everyone is supported.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Who else is going to jump in here right away? Kathy?
One example that I like to turn to, and it's kind of outside the food, but I think we can make a jump to that, is motor vehicle fatalities. When you think about how many more cars are on the road now than, say, 100 years ago, we've increased about 11-fold. But the rate of motor vehicle fatalities has decreased about 90%. And it's a lot of factors that go into that. I think a lot of us, when we think about motor vehicle safety, we think about buckling up. And if you look at the little model, that could be something that you were taught when you were a child. Your parents had you buckle up. We hear messages, see things on billboards about that. But then there's also, kind of start stepping outside of that, your peers as a teenager, the people that you hang out with, what do they do? And you start picking up those habits. And then there's things in the community and at the policy level. So again, to go back to the motor vehicle example, the reason there's been such a decrease is because there was really a systematic approach to this. Besides people and buckling up, it took industry, things like the car manufacturers installing the safety belts, crack-resistant windshields, airbags that we have today. It took the communities looking at roads, so there's a lot of the stripes on the center line, there's reflectors, the barriers between lanes. Government, if you look at the state and the local level, the licensing requirements, the testing requirements to be able to drive, local traffic regulations, vehicle inspections. So there's this whole systematic approach that has brought those rates down. And my classic example in the food range is, an apple a day may keep the doctor away, but are you able to get that apple? So you need to look across the spectrum for what in our community is helping to keep us healthy.
Okay, so we're talking about factors beyond ourselves. I mean, it's not just the choices we make, but whether it's the breastfeeding, whether it's like auto safety, other kinds of things. Okay, who else here?
I'd like to talk about the behavioral health aspect of it. I am relatively new to the hunger arena and food deserts and food insecurities. I can only speak to what I've seen at Health Partners with the young children that come into the clinic and work with Karen Martin. We see a lot of children who come in whose parents are unable to provide nutritious food for them. This morphs into children who come in with anxiety, depression, food allergies. I see babies in the lobby sometimes that are, I think it's red Kool-Aid, or that red drink they give their babies. And these sometimes are young moms. I see these same children, because I've been there like 6-7 years now, end up on the adult side. They're going through their teen years, so obviously I see teenagers too. And then we're seeing that childhood obesity morph into type 2 diabetes. We see the cigarette smoking of our teens morph into, as they get older, COPD. So we see all of these things, and the information is there. We do patient education. We try our best to intervene, but we cannot do this by ourselves without some sort of systematic policies in this area, changes in how we view those who live in these deserts, so that overall there is a reduction in these chronic illnesses.
So you're seeing all these things happening in people, and you're saying we need some changes in the community. Any other solutions you think of right now, Daphne, that's going to make a difference in a young person's life, that they're smoking in the home, more than just policies, right?
I think it starts at the school level, but the schools has burdens too, because they have to deal with children who come from homes that are kind of disruptive. But I guess it really starts. It starts in the belly, and it just moves on through every system that we have in place.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Who's next? Father Ross.
A guy was praying to God, and he said, God, how much is $1 million in your sight? And God said, a penny. He said, God, how long is 1,000,000 years in your sight? And God said, a second. The guy said, God, can I have a penny? And God said, in a second. I'd like to take it to another level, if you don't mind. Some years ago, I was able to go to one of the seminars on Bridges Out of Poverty, using Ruby Payne's statistics and her analysis of circumstances. And it was very enlightening for me. And then I began to look at my community, our community. I grew up in Lima. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, between 2007 and 2011, 33.9% of our population lives below the poverty level. 33.9%. In the city of Lima, 9.8% have a bachelor's degree or higher. The state of Ohio, the average is 24.5%. In Allen County, it rises to 15.7%. I believe there's some correlation among all these factors. Ruby Payne says, food in terms of quantity. The middle class look at food in terms of quality. The upper class look at food in terms of presentation. So we can talk about, and I think it's healthy, no pun intended, it's healthy to talk about fruits and vegetables. But the real issue is the poverty that surrounds us, I believe. And the poverty is directly connected, in my sense, to the education. To education. Not just about the right way we eat, but it goes far beyond that. So I think we have to, in the community, continue on this level to engage people in conversation about how we bring people out of poverty in Lima, Ohio, in Allen County. How we bring people to value the education and the higher education that they need to continue to sustain themselves in this community. Because there's a lot of generational poverty. A lot of students are leaving our schools because they know they can go on into the real world, so to speak. In some cases, they'll have children, knowing that they may be getting government assistance. And it's a generational thing that we face in many cases, as I understand it. So as we address the issue, I think we just don't want to rearrange deck chairs on the Titanic. What we want to do is look at the other issues as well. And when we say that's up to the government leaders to do it, I think that's a fallacious argument. It's our responsibility to say, what are we going to do to step forward as leaders in the community to say, how are we going to improve not only our educational system, but how are we going to improve the lives of the parents who want to be in that educational system and motivate them to stay in that educational system? Because I think eventually it will have a broader impact then on the community.
Thank you. I forgot to put a seatbelt on your chair. So you're talking about distinct factors in poverty, and you believe that education, for one thing, is part of the big solution with that. Okay. Chris.
Okay. Well, I'm going to piggyback off of what Father Dave just said, and he used a word here, probably his second to last word, motivation. And I'm going to bring it back to a much more personal level for you. Many of you raised your hands. You knew the correct answer. How many of you did the correct things for which you knew the correct answer? How many of you are getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night? How many of you are filling your plates half full with fruits and vegetables every single day? We are probably part of that 9.8% of people that have a bachelor's degree or higher in most cases. And yet we're not doing it. If we're not doing it, I mean, we have knowledge. What's going on? Where's our priorities? Where's the motivation? And I think one of the things that's important, this ecological model looks at the individual and your genetic makeup, but it also looks at interpersonal relationships. How do we start to develop those relationships in ways that they can support us in what we do? I know that if my walking partner doesn't meet me for lunch to go walk, I won't go walk. I have an accountability if I have to show up, but I can find a lot of things I need to do over that lunch hour instead of going out and walking, for example, even though I have the knowledge. And so I think when we start talking about all of these things, one of the things we have to keep in mind too is how do we build relationships that allow us to support the kinds of appropriate, healthful behaviors that allow us to move forward and be able to interact within a community.
Okay, so why is knowing not enough? Lots of factors have been named here already. Anybody want to make a comment from something anybody else has said here at this point? How about out here? Who has a question or a comment? Just raise your hand real quick. Yes.
I found it interesting at my dentist to realize that children today and the amount of cavities that they have in their teeth has increased when we think about the fluoride in water, that these kids are drinking so much sugar pop, not diet pop, but sugared liquids all day long. I know with my kids, you know, I was very conscientious about getting the little sealants in there, and, you know, they didn't have fillings, and, you know, as opposed to my mouth having fillings over the years and stuff, but it's back now to being worse today than it was 20, 30 years ago. And then that health, because when you have bad teeth, then they have all these other things that start going on in their body.
Daphne, you see that systemic stuff at the Health Partners, right?
Yes, we do. That's why one of the things we do there is we have dental, also involved with behavioral health, adult care, and pediatrics. So that if a child comes in and Karen sees a child whose mouth has some issues, she'll have a dentist come over to see that child to make sure that in their next visit that this child has the dental care that they need.
Okay, so systemic care is really,
systemic care.
really
Yes.
important. Who else? Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as far as the knowing not being enough, like what Kathy said, we know, like with this mobile produce market, that's a component, the actual bus and the produce being on the bus and taking it into the areas. But it does have, we know, I mean, the way this thing came to fruition was, I mean, tens, 20s, tens of people at least, but lots of aspects of the community coming together to make this happen. For myself, the text and drive thing, I know that's dangerous, but I didn't quit doing it until I saw the ads and saw the, I mean, it took, again, there was a systematic sort of campaign that took place until it got it, into at least my head. I don't even have hair, but it took a while to get through to me, that hey, this could actually kill somebody or kill me. So with the healthy eating too, I mean, I think we're doing the right thing here, but like everyone has said, we have to keep not just all these people engaged, but we have to continue engaging more people, because it takes everybody. So.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. So external factors make a difference. Who else? Who else? Comment or question? Anything for the panel? Any response up here to what's been said?
One of the things when we were starting the food bank 25 years ago, there are a lot of people that were, oh, these kids are nice and healthy and chubby. Well, healthy and chubby chubby doesn't necessarily mean healthy. And I think that's one of the mythologies that we had to overcome. I'm chubby, but I'm probably not as healthy as I should be, because it's not the good food. And chubby doesn't necessarily mean healthy.
Thank you. Anybody else can name a factor we've not talked about? Why is knowing not enough?
Well, for one thing, when you're a parent, you cannot be a coward. You have to stand up and tell your children no, no, no sometimes. And that includes no to what Johnny next door is drinking Pepsi or eating all the candy he wants. And that's where it starts at. It starts with the parent from breastfeeding or bottle feeding on up. And that's how they learn from the parents.
I think that's a good point. It's generational. We learn to eat from day one what our parents put in our mouths, and they've given us what they were taught. So how do we break that generational thing? Food is very emotional to us. I don't like to go to potlucks that have healthy food. It's not warm and friendly. I don't want yogurt for dessert with a carrot casserole. I want the emotional food that was cooked when I was a kid, difference being it was fresh, it was not processed, it was on a farm, and we played outside all day.
It does make a difference what you were raised on. A couple weekends ago, our daughter and son-in-law and 2 grandkids were at our home, and they're 6 and 8 years old, the grandkids. And I was actually amazed at how they were so happy to snack on carrots and apple slices and things like that. And that's what's happening in their home. That wasn't how I grew up. I'm like that.
But did you notice the commercials on television? How do we get our kids to eat our carrots? You dip them in Hidden Ranch, which has more calories than all these other things together. I've made this observation some time ago. You made a wonderful observation back here about forcing our kids or doing things. I was talking to the people in my cafeteria the other day. Out of the 110 kids in my school at St. Rose, I think she said maybe 3 or 4 will eat their food, their vegetables at the meal, and the rest is thrown away. The rest is thrown away. Now, which, I mean, I think that's a tragedy that the government says if you're going to have free and reduced, you must put that on there, and the kids have to throw it away themselves. That's one issue that I'd like to discuss. But here's the other thing I've observed too. This is an observation and not a judgment. It's an observation. In families, when mom and dad don't get along, or I found, at least among my students in my school, in families where there's divorce, when the children come home, the only source of emotional support in many cases the parents will be from their children. And so they're not inclined to say to the kids, you've got to eat that. You've got to do this, you've got to do that. Because the children, from their perspective, will say, I don't love you, or I don't need to do that. And what happens is the parent doesn't want to risk that emotional barricade. And so they'll succumb to the child's wishes in many cases, which can be deleterious on many aspects in the social plane.
Yeah, we have a comment here.
Well, yeah, I love the comment back here about parents can't be cowards. I mean, I'm 100% sure that if I asked my kids what I should get at the grocery store, it would be pop, it would be chips, it would be, So, just as recently as last night, I was talking to my son and he said, can we not put zucchini in the spaghetti sauce? And I said, when you move out, you can make it however you want. But no, here's what we're going to have tonight. So, yeah, that's it. I mean, it's not easy, but you got to do it. So.
Yeah. So the social dynamics of the family itself, that's an important factor. Yes.
And I think it even goes beyond just the social dynamics of the family. How do we engage those people in the community that are most affected? Now, I had the distinct privilege in the short session of being with Father Dave, so we've been able to talk a little bit about this. But, okay, if we have a situation in the home where we have parents who don't get along, who will lean perhaps inappropriately on children for emotional support, then I may not be able to break that cycle. So what else could I do to step in? How could I get creative? So maybe I get creative by having the kids learn how to cook something at school and come home and say, hey, Mom, I want to make this. And then the parent, not wanting to upset the child, gives in to the child, but is giving in a very positive kind of way. So can we get creative in terms of how we meet people where they are in order to engage them in different kinds of behaviors that may ultimately lead to better health? And I think that, the system, it's going to be tough to change the system right away. Okay. So how can I still work with the system that I can't change tomorrow in such a way that I still might get different behaviors with the goal that ultimately I could change something else?
Do they still have home ec classes? Alida? That would be a way.
Who has an answer on that? I heard somebody saying.
Elida. Elida still offers, but it's optional.
Optional?
But they still have a home ec room.
Well,
Shawnee, okay.
So, I learned to cook in home ec. We learned to set the table in home ec. So I kind of wonder, is that something, because it's community-based, obviously Shawnee does it, it's optional, Alida does it, it's optional, but is that an option since the kids are in school, they like to be involved, some have gardens, why not teach them in home economics how to eat healthy? Because these are the mothers of tomorrow. Yes, they can, because they're the daddies too.
Okay, so we're talking about the arenas where we have influence or control, and the home is a place where we have immediate, right? We have immediate influence. We can make decisions for ourselves personally or with our family. And I don't know what everybody here does professionally, but let's just take a moment and think about, in your sphere of influence, where do you work? What do you do? What do you influence? We're talking about solutions here. We've been talking a lot about the issues, but what are some solutions? Think about that for a minute. We'll see if we get some response. If you have something from where you work, where you are, I'm going to hold your comment just a minute here and see if somebody else has one. Where you work or where you hang out or anything, where can you... Okay, we got one back here. I was hoping I'd get a taker.
I think one of the best parts for us, something like at our church with our children's ministry, and something of the snacks that we provide, or we have for our Sunday services. The kids are used to our snacks. We started off with bags of individual Doritos or something like that, and they would bring in those horrible little juice packs that they used to, with the foil tops that they used to suck through their teeth. And now we can change it to carrot sticks and things that are healthier for them, where we can help them and they can take it back to their families. They learn it from us and then take it back to their families as well.
Okay, so that's in the church setting. Well, we're doing some of that at Trinity too. People there know I'm the original Cookie Monster. And so after worship, we have a variety of snacks now, not just those sweets. So, hand over here.
This pertains more to the workplace. I have a vending machine that I am going to try and do to get rid of because it sells nothing but sweet soda, and we're going to work to put water in it and other healthy drinks. So that's one thing we can do. The other thing I think too is we all serve lunches from time to time, and we need to think about what we serve for lunch and the healthy food that we can serve for lunch. So that's one thing that I can do in my workplace that may have an impact upon other people, that my board members, people that visit, come into my building, that they will see that we provide healthy drinks and not soda and those kinds of things. So that's one thing, very specific, but it can have a ripple effect.
Okay, so vending and all. Any response from the panel on that? Okay, yes.
A couple of years ago, my husband actually purchased his own property, and we own a medical practice. But one of the things in the planning of that office was to make a very large break area that had a large pantry, that had a large refrigerator, that had a dishwasher, that made it easily accessible for our staff to actually grocery shop and keep groceries there on hand for them to provide themselves with a nutritious lunch or breakfast or whatever. So that was part of the plan.
Dave?
So equipping the workplace with those kinds of things. Yes.
Again, if I could just emphasize that one point I made at the beginning. We who sit here, I believe, I may be mistaken, but I think we would consider ourselves middle class. I think we would. And we may be thinking about the issue from the middle class perspective. We're talking about quality. Middle class looks at food in terms of quality. The poor are thinking of quantity. Because they don't know where the next meal is coming from in some cases. So how do we address that issue? How are we going to address that issue if 33.9% of the Lima community is under that poverty level? So we're saying to ourselves, I think, here's how we would do it. But what we need to say is, how can we do it with the poor?
Do you have a suggestion?
I don't.
Who does?
I thought education was part of the issue.
Okay, education. Who else? Anybody else have a comment on that? On the issue Father Ross is talking about? Oh, go up front there. Could you hand the microphone up there, please?
I do have a suggestion for that, and my question to the question would be, where have all the villages gone? Back in the day, it would be you would have the older women to sit with the younger women to teach them how to grocery shop. And if you go to grocery stores now and you see some of the younger women with EBT cards, they buy baskets full of junk food, corn dogs, French fries, all of those different things. So simple things like sitting with a young woman, teaching her how to grocery shop, teaching her how to put her food up in the freezer or in the refrigerator, because you would find that some young women don't know how to even put their groceries up properly, and then they're wasting food with freezer burn and expired foods and all of that. So I think a creative way would just to adopt some of the initiatives back in the day that really weren't initiatives, it was just the way of life, and that was to live by the way of the village.
So you're talking about social systems of encouragement, teaching. Did you have a comment? Oh, okay.
How about asking the poor instead of always dictating to the poor? Get groups together and ask them what they want and how they would do it, and help them to be part of the solution instead of always telling them what to do.
Well, I'm a big proponent of looking at charity and how we deal with aid of any sort, any kind of program, whether it be here locally or nationally, in such a way that it's sustainable and that it meets the need of the people. And one of the best ways to achieve sustainable aid is to have the people take ownership of whatever it is that they're doing. I can't know the experience of the people that live in Dave's neighborhood because I've never lived that life. I can't know the experience of the villages I go to in the Dominican Republic because I'm not Dominican and I don't live in that kind of an environment. But what I can do is talk to the people, and what I've discovered and what I'm learning more and more is the more investment that they have in the system and the more say that they have, the more ownership they've got. The more ownership, the more pride. The more pride, the more likely they are to do those things. So how do we reach out to those people in a way that is respectful, that's culturally sensitive, that doesn't say, I'm reaching out to you because I know more than you, in order to engage them in this process as opposed to providing it and putting it out there for them?
Also let them know that we're struggling too, because we're not making all the right choices, So kind of engage the relationship, like the father was talking about, the relationship.
We have some students here from Lima Senior, so.
I was always curious why healthy foods were so expensive instead of cheap like junk food.
Okay, question, why are healthy foods expensive? Who can answer that? Oh, up here.
I love that question, and I just want to give you a round of applause for even asking it. And we could spend days answering it, but it starts with the way that food is grown in this country and how we pay for the way that the food is grown in this country. For a long time, it has been far cheaper to produce on a large scale foods like corn that get turned into things like corn syrup. And, that's complex. There's a lot of complex policies that are driving that. But it also has to do with consumer preferences. People become addicted to these foods, literally, and expect their foods to be, very sweet and have those certain flavors. Even things like bread, that normally wouldn't have a lot of sugar in it, now does, because people just expect to have those tastes, and really no matter what they're eating. So it really starts with, our policies and practices for how we grow food in this country. And it also has to do with the way food is marketed in this country. So, I made a joke earlier when I was talking about, would that there was, Tomatoes Inc. or, Fresh Kale R Us, some huge company like that. And there's a couple, okay, there's Driscoll, there's Sunkist, there's Dole, but for the most part, fruits and vegetables and a lot of those perimeter foods in a grocery store are kind of on their own. They tend to be locally sourced. Dairy, for example, there's no, very few sort of large national dairies. They tend to be fairly regional or even very local. And we have a situation where the whole middle of the grocery store is the packaged food, and that's where the money is, and it's a vertically integrated business. So from the farms to the packagers, to the distributors, to the retailers. It's the same people. And there's a lot of money in that. And there's just not a whole lot of money in growing apples. And that has, there are a lot of complex reasons for that. But one of the things that I think is really promising is looking, and I also want to say one thing too. I don't want to dismiss, from a hunger perspective, the very real fact that the caloric density of fast food is far greater than the caloric density of iceberg lettuce. That is something that's real, and that means that when you're hungry and you have $1, guess what? You're going to the dollar menu because you know your kids will be full when they finish their 6-piece chicken nuggets. They're not going to be full eating 2 Granny Smith apples. But so that's real. But when we look at how the food is marketed and the millions and millions and millions of dollars that goes into marketing the foods that are branded, it's the branding of the foods and protecting that brand that is kind of what's driving a lot of this. And unfortunately, I wish that there were. I love this question. Why is knowledge not enough? I always sort of, I'm sure that there's an exception to this, but I sort of say somewhat glibly that there aren't a lot of people who walk into McDonald's or any fast food restaurant and order a Big Mac and think they're getting the nutritional equivalent of a kale salad. Most people get it. People, but then it's like, but then why? And the why is it tastes amazing. It's cheap. It's easy to get, and those are real challenges. They're not intractable, but they're real challenges. So the reason as to why produce is more expensive, and it isn't always. There's really a lot of wonderful ways to make it less expensive, is because there's no manufacturer backing it up, and because it's not produced using commodity crops. And the distribution channels and processing and so on is not the same as the infrastructure designed in this country to really support the production and processing of things like corn and soy. So I really loved your question and appreciate the your thoughtfulness about that.
So a very complex issue, but a very important question, and we need to keep asking. So we have students from Lima Senior. Do we have students from any other schools here today? Where? Ohio Northern? Great. Any other schools? Bluffton University? Great. Any other schools? Ohio State. Any other schools? Great. It's wonderful having these students here today. We're going to take a moment here and do a little wrap-up. Let each of our panel members kind of give one last shot on something that they just want to leave with you before we conclude here today.
I'd just like to say one last thing about something Karen said, which was absolutely true. Think about how much money is actually going from marketing for these huge companies and chains and franchises. They use emotion, so it's happiness. I'm loving it. It's joy. We don't use that for public health, and we're actually just starting to see that now. I don't know if you've seen the CDC tobacco-free campaigns, where people are showing you the effects of tobacco, changing their trachs, the fact that their legs were amputated. I'm sure that affected you emotionally. Think about what Gary said with texting and driving. You know that it's not acceptable, you shouldn't do it, but if you did see that commercial where a guy killed 3 kids by doing that, that plays with your emotions. You're thinking about it. So that's something that we should think about, even as a community, approaching healthy eating in a different way.
I thought it was interesting as we were talking that the conversation just kind of naturally flowed from the family up through the friends to the work sites and to the community level. And I guess it's just at that level that we really need to do something. Karen mentioned this morning that health is a state of well-being, and I think we all would agree it's body, mind, and spirit. And so health is really our ability to reach our full potential as a human being. And I think by extension then, it's the health of our community that determines whether our community can reach its full potential. And if we want to have a vibrant, thriving community, we need vibrant, thriving people. And a lot of times people say that, it's your own personal responsibility to take care of yourself and your health, but it's not right when things outside of our control impact our health. And I think as a community, we have a responsibility, just like we do for personal, to care for our community's health. Jerry mentioned this morning, it needs to start here. One of my quotes or favorite quotes, I've heard it attributed to Churchill. I'm not sure that he's the one who actually said it, but he said, Americans can always be counted on to do the right thing after they've tried everything else. So it's time now to do the right thing.
I guess what I would say is when someone poses a systemic problem that requires the change of a law or a policy, and I think, oh my gosh, that's way too big. I don't, A, have time, B, don't know how to do it. I don't know how to affect change at that level, even though I know that that's where change needs to happen. I then try and come back to, and would challenge you all to do the same thing. What can I do as an individual in order to reach out? Having programs where we reach out and we do a village. How do you become part of that village? I can hold a workshop. Are the people going to come? Probably not. But if I go next door to somebody and I say, hey, why don't you come over? Let's try some new recipes and we'll do a meal share and we can each take half and you can go home and change. Or go home and freeze it rather, and we can change up the meals. I might actually get somebody to take me up on that. So what can I do at an individual level to reach out and be a part of the process?
I'm sitting here thinking, what would my closing remarks be? And all I can come up with that hasn't been said already, or it's probably been said, but I'll say it the way my grandmother said it to us when we were kids. She was a farmer. And I think they were well-to-do farmers for those days. So we had cows, horses, pigs, chickens, corn, tobacco, and all the other sort of stuff in a garden. And people around would come and get stuff. And I selfishly said to my grandmother, why are you always giving away food? And she said, people can't eat slop, pig slop, have broken spirits, down and out, and be good to themselves or anyone else. And that was back in the 70s. Okay, I'm lying. It was in the 60s. But after listening to what you said today and being involved in the programs a few weeks now, I understand what you put in affects every aspect of your life, including your spirit. And that's what I think we have to take out of this. We have to have good feel for this community to be successful and healthy.
I guess I would just encourage a paradigm shift on our part, that as we address this issue in our community, we don't think from our own personal perspectives. We think of the perspectives of those whom we're here to serve.
All right. Well, there's been some question about where we go from here, and we're going to have, for a few minutes here, just some quiet reflection time. In my faith tradition, it might be called a come to Jesus moment, but there are sheets of paper on your tables, and one of them asks, what would you like to see happen, and how can I contribute? I want you to take some moments, just kind of quiet here in the room. Think about those two questions and write something down. We're going to leave these on the table because our leaders are interested in these responses and knowing who's interested in what. There's another form that indicates what you're interested in getting involved in, and so both of these are for you to fill out and leave on your table. But let's just have just some moments of quiet and think about each of us. I always hate to break up some good thoughts and some commitments you're making there, but we'll need to move on, and you can continue working on that. Perhaps during lunch, please leave your comments on the tables. Before we conclude, I want to put a plug in for Sherry Mitchell and the work that she does with Activate Allen County. If you are a part of an organization or a business and you want to look at some of your interior policies for being healthier, then she's the person to contact. We had her come to Trinity Church and to help us think about the issue of being a smoke-free campus. And so she made an excellent presentation to our board. The board discussed that. I think we've become the first church in the area to do that. And it's just, I mean, she was a tremendous resource. And other issues as well she can help you with. So that's, I want to put that plug in. So let's express our thanks to the panel here today. And thank you all very much.